Good evening. Welcome. It's been a while. Hope everyone's doing all right. Every once in a while, you kind of take a step back and analyze what you're doing and make changes accordingly. So that's one of the things I did here. I'm going to kind of change the format of this too. We're going to do this as almost like a sprint review, where I'm going to show off kind of what I've done in the last little while, almost like a demo. The VR development's been going well. I'll show off some of it now, and there's been some interesting uh, little tidbits that I want to share. The assets I'm using, like the Hexa body and the Hurricane VR combination, there was an interesting one with my save game that I'll get into. That was a bit out of the ordinary for me, anyway. It was about 3 weeks ago that I stopped the full time streaming. Took a step back and said, what are we doing? We had Ortunia Mysteries release in the summer. Which was a success, a win from a development perspective and a release perspective. And then we had the streaming. For example, to take the streaming to the next level, I'd have to put a bunch of energy and money into it, and same with the games. And so I decided that it was very much worth my while to pick one and use that. And so I did pick the games. That's the whole thing that I was starting with. So the decision was to actually just start taking the time that I was streaming and focusing on the development again. I found that on the streams, especially just before I stopped the full time, at least the 4 times a week, a lot of my streams were less about the chatting and more about the coding. And so I found, like that was definitely where the passion was. And so, I have made some great connections here. We've got Mig Creates Games and, I have Rip2 that was rating me, a few others. And so, I'm going to keep this up and going probably once every 2 weeks. But let me get to that in a minute here. And so, yeah, I decided I was going to focus on the games again. And so that's what I've been doing. And I've been helping my wife with her business in mornings. And then the afternoon and the evenings have been focusing on the conversion of Ortunia to VR. The way I work is in sprints. I have for a very long time. It would be coming up to 2 decades now, and yeah, maybe not quite that long, 15 years. And that's the way I work best. And one of the things when you work with sprints on a team is that you have your sprint review at the end of the 2 week cycle, and that's kind of what I'm going to use this time for. I guess I should also just update too. I'm kind of in the process of talking with the publisher to release the game on PlayStation and Nintendo. So that's kind of exciting for me. I've had a few back and forths over the last month or so. And so we'll see where that goes, but that's kind of exciting. As I had my son with his MetaQuest 3S just play through the first part of the game and give me some suggestions on what to fix and what to change. Maripon, you and I have talked a number of times about how the game in VR becomes different, right? You have to consider different things, how you pick things up, how you're interacting with the environment. One of the things that it might show up in the demo stuff that I do today, but when I'm picking some stuff up, it's so huge in my hand that it blocks the entire vision of the player. And so, I'm going to I've got a couple possible solutions to that, from shrinking those objects down to even having them a little bit transparent so you can see through them. So I'm going to play around with that a bit, but so yeah, I guess to start, we were when we stopped getting together there, we were working on the chapter 4, and so that has now been the first pass through is done as is chapter 5. So I'm gonna just get the headset going, and we can just start talking about some of the stuff here. So yeah, chapter 4 is now in a spot where we can get through it. Now, I said that now, but is it really? So what do I mean by that? I did a refactor a few days ago to try and just enhance and optimize some of the code. And it involved just making sure that, there was some if else if conditionals that needed a bit of working. And so
Oh no!
I did do that.
They must have caught
and
up to
then,
them. Hang on, Jorn. I am coming!
Basically, I went a bit too far. And in my testing on chapter 1 this afternoon, I realized there's a spot where I added an else if where I shouldn't, and I wasn't able to solve any of the puzzles after that. So So yeah, so we've got our chapter 4. Actually, one of the things I do want to point out with the Hexabody and the Hurricane VR are the hands. Now, if we look here, we've got the controllers like this, and the hands are pointing straight up. When you're in the menu of the VR, those hands should be 90 degrees rotated like this, but not with my hands. They should be like that. And my son thinks that's a remnant of the Hexabody stuff being tested in the Valve VR stuff. So I have not figured out exactly how to change that, but for one, that'll fix some of the things that I've seen. When we were together earlier, there was a point where I was trying to get the pointing, like a laser out of my finger so we could see where we're pointing, and it just was acting oddly, and I think that's probably the reason. Similarly, when we're pointing at stuff to pick up, it was really difficult to do that from here. For example, to try and get the scroll, and that's not happening now. There we go. Like this candle, you're kind of pointing it in the wrong way. It should be pointing like this instead of like this. So that's got to be fixed, obviously. I'm pretty short now because I'm sitting down. And so that's another consideration that I've got to start looking at as well. But you can see we've got a lot of things here just working. One of the things I wanted to show that's a little bit of a bug, I think we saw this last time too, but if we look, this plate is a one-sided asset. So obviously that's no good when it comes to VR, and we'll have to address that. I'm not sure if my asset package has an equivalent, so we may have to swap it out or something, but yeah, you can see as it's dropped to the floor, suddenly it's gone. So you can actually find it again like that, and it's actually under the rug. So this is another thing I've been dealing with here, and if we kind of go far enough, we can probably get it out, but yeah, there, it's in my hand again. So anyway, a lot of these are interesting. I think that's all to talk about for level 4. That was mainly the thing, was that it's now we can actually solve. In fact, let's just solve this one here. So we've got our candle. Let's grab that plate again. So you can see we've got a little bit of issues with colliders and things because of that. We'll grab the candle. So this book, I think, goes over here. Candle. When we were together as well last time, there was a bunch of problems with the save file. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but those have been resolved now, and I want to talk about that a little more detail. Here's another one. If you look at this candle's got no bottom. So just little things like that we still have to address. Oops, that won't go there. I'll just chuck it over there. I'm getting a little bit better at chucking the objects to where I want them to go. I think generally it's getting better. There's still a lot of the polishing stuff that needs to happen, but plate goes here, I think. Nope. Nope, I'm on the wrong side, I guess. Come on. There we go. So that's one of the examples there that I think if the controllers were aligned the way they're supposed to be, then I'd have a little less trouble with it. I've been considering, must go on this one here. There we go. I've been considering with, like we had started. In fact, I'll load chapter 2 because I still have what I was doing before with a blue line coming out of the finger here. It's something that might work in the long run. We'll see. Let's put that up there too. And we've got our cup. We need the open book, which I think is in here. No, we didn't pick that up. There it is right there. Can go over here. No, is it this one? No, this is the oops, put that in there. This is the wine bottle. No, it's not. What is this one? This is... Oh, the scroll. Whoa. I guess I didn't pick the scroll up. There we go. So we think this side is done. And this book goes over here. This one? And then we got the wine bottle. I think this is the last one. Nope. Yeah, we need one more cup. All right, so we heard the door. So that's one of the things that we need to consider here is, and actually I'm not sure if it happened, but if there's a flash on the screen that you're looking at. So in the PC version, we use the Sin Machine virtual camera, and when there's a puzzle that's completed, there's a fade out and fade in to what changes in the game. You know, like a door opens usually, right? And then fades out, fades back into where the player is. That's very disorienting on the VR. And so what's interesting is that it's still happening in the, you know, the view that we're seeing in Unity, but not on the headset. It's not moving the camera because the camera is different now, but it's actually still the fade in, fade out still happens. And so that is a key to what still needs to happen in that rate. In fact, what do we see here? This canvas. The canvas doesn't work the same in VR as it does on the PC, and so all of this stuff with the inventory and the buttons and the settings that we see don't show up, of course, in the VR. And so if we're looking at my usual list of tasks, those things are very much high in the priority. How are we going to look at the hints, and how are we going to look at the dialogue that's been said? So yeah, lots of things to consider. This is interesting. I expect that this is broken now because of the camera stuff with the dialogue, but this is why demos happen, is you see stuff like this. Now I am clicking on the canvas, which won't be part of the VR game anymore, but yeah, so it's going to be fascinating. I think I'll probably tackle that in the next sprint, but basically this entire canvas on all of these levels will just go away, and we'll have to come up with different ways to do it. So yeah, here we've got our chapter 5.
I'm too late. Look, there is another letter down there. Who is that one from?
And so our letter is actually fallen through this, and so again, another artifact of how I did something in the PC version, and it's different now in the VR. This also highlights the letter opening and the book reading still hasn't been addressed either. However, my younger son has taken up an interest in Blender, which I think we've talked about before, and so he's actually working on a opening book animation that we'll give a shot, give a try. So that will be kind of fun. This one we'll be able to see the differences here. I love this hallway in the VR. I mean, on the PC version it was pretty good, but it's with all the smoke, it's pretty effective. This, where we're lighting the torches, is an example of where the camera would change, and I don't think I've taken the camera movement off of these.
Here we go again.
And so let's
Looks like I am stuck.
If I actually light this one. No, it didn't actually do it, so that's good. Maybe I've taken it out of here, but that was an instance where, again, the flash would happen. So I just have to make sure throughout the game that it's the camera does not change like that. And here's another issue as well with these things, and that's all of them. I've done a few shorts on this, but we got to be able to control that a little bit better. There's a lot more of that where, in the PC version, I'm clicking on the mouse on these things and it lights, whereas this one, I'm touching it and it's doing it multiple times. My older boy has recommended that instead of touching these things, that since this is a magical world, that we have something like a button on here that would say start a fire on my hand, and we'd be able to shoot it over there and allow it to light that way. It'd be kind of fun, I think. So we'll see if we can do that. There we go. First try. But we can see we're getting it there, and
Is this the cathedral's tower?
Atmosphere's pretty cool.
Those pedestals look like the ones in the catacombs.
Yeah, this is an example here. This skull is massive in the way that it's being used in the VR, where it seemed okay in the regular one. And this one's not as bad as some of them, where the props are so big that, it basically takes up the whole space, kind of like this. So there are a few here that I'm going to want to, maybe this will shrink. These ones I might want to shrink permanently, when we put them on here. They don't need to be that big, but, we could also, on some of these other ones, have it so that they shrink temporarily and then grow to the next size. So I want to just also talk about the menus. So we talked about how the canvas is different, right? And so, when I start, well, let's do this again. If we start it here, on our screen here in Unity, we get the traditional PC canvas where it says chapter 5 like that, the conclusion, and then we are getting our inventory and such. Ooh, look, the letter is actually remembered there. That's great. That's actually something that needs to happen, because it's remembered in this old inventory, but in the backpack. There we go. You can see that letter's not in the backpack. And so that's, I want to talk about that a little bit. How does that work? And this is where it gets interesting from, the way I did it, where we've got the PC version of the game and then the VR version of the game. And so the VR version is using that backpack. And if we look at our inventory controller, I've created what I called an inventory adapter here. And it's basically, because all of my puzzles rely on the inventory system that we see on the screen here, what I have done is have this adapter. And if we look at the code, we have our start function here, but we've got an update that basically gets everything, gets the inventory count. And we say that if the inventory count is not equal to the backpack inventory count, then we've got to do something here. And so this thing is monitoring the backpack, and if something is added in there, then we insert it into the existing PC inventory. The existing PC is not right. The existing flat screen game inventory, or the legacy inventory. And if it is less than, then we remove something from the inventory. And so that's what the intention of this adapter is, and why it's called the adapters. It's kind of monitoring the new inventory to keep the old inventory up to date, and therefore I don't have to update code to try and use a new inventory. It's working flawlessly as long as I keep the game running. If I use my save game, then the inventory still exists in the old, but not in the new. So there's a little bit of work to do there. If we go back, though, to the canvas itself, this idea here where we've got our inventory, we've got our, in fact, even if we go to our scenes and we go to the main menu that was for the main game, this is completely a canvas, right? And so this doesn't work anymore. You don't, in VR, you don't do that, right? And so what you do is use the world canvas. I think we've talked about that also on the stream before, but we can see how this works. There's our canvas there. It's just like if you have a 2D game, and then we've got our 3D world here. And it's kind of how Unity combines them so that you can have the canvas overlay what you've got on the screen. But in VR, that doesn't work the same way. And so they use what's called a world canvas, and that's as if you're having one of these canvases floating in the world. And so that's how I've started this. It's very rough now, but I'll show you kind of the idea here. And what I did was made a copy of my prologue, and then have the player down here we can see. And then there's what I've got here as the VR canvas. And it's very much a similar thing to what we just saw on the main PC version of the menu. Let me just, again, we'll run the game, and you can kind of see it's by no means done, but you can kind of get the idea of what we're going for. Okay, let's just run this scene. Now, the idea here is that the player can't move in this scene. And so, and additionally, there shouldn't be a player. Like right now, when this loads, it's still my hands will be there and such, but we can see what the idea. Like there's the player, my hands, those things will disappear. You'll still be able to kind of look around and see the room around you, but I can't move. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm trying to move, jump, can't do anything. And then we've got our buttons here, and we'll have like the pointer, just like you do on any of the other VR games. And so that's kind of the idea. We've got this floating screen in front of us that will handle getting the game going in that. This is the example of the world canvas. Now, the other part of the world canvas that I want to talk about is how I'm going to do books. Here's our book. Let's pick it up. And what I want to do is, well, here, let me take a step back. In the PC version of the game, when we have this in inventory and hit the right-click button, then a page of the book animates open. It's just a page that appears small and then expands, and you see the words. And so what I would like to have happen is when you've got the book in your hands like this, and you click a some button, that this object will disappear. Another one will appear that is the one that my son's making with the animation, and it'll open up, and there's a bunch of fancy page flips. But then when the book opens up to the pages that we're aiming for, we'll have two small world canvases on the book that will show the dialogue that we already see in the PC version. So that's kind of what we're trying to do there, in another use for the world canvas. One of the features of the Steam version, of course, is the Steam achievements, and so I have removed the Steam integration. We no longer have the Steam object in the tree here anymore, but all of the code about where all the achievements are is still in. It's just commented out because the MetaQuest has some sort of achievement mechanism that, at least I assume they do, that we'll be able to hook into. So that'll be a feature later on down the road. Let's talk about the save. So here's the old player. It's hidden now, and I'll be deleting it the next time I actually do any changes in chapter 4. But the old player is very simple. It's just an object. It's actually a capsule with the capsule collider, just like a traditional one. Always as a first-person player, right? It's usually the capsule. We've got an object for the head that's just an empty object. And then we've got our camera. We've got an item carry position. We've got an object for the feet. Anyways, how does the save work? In the main part of the game, when we hit a save checkpoint, and we can see those right here. If we go back, we can see all of the different save checkpoints here. When our character hits one of those, there's a number of things that happen. We've got our puzzle items. I have a function that loops through this entire tree and takes the position, the rotation, the tag name, whether it's kinematic is set, and a couple other pieces of data, and exports it in, or inputs those into an object. We have a subset of the main game object. It's called here the game object info. And so you can see we keep the name, the tag, whether it's active, its position, its rotation, light intensity if it has it, whether is kinematic is set to true or not, and then a list of its children. And so then we're able to recursively through that tree generate these subset game objects and then output them into, and we have it's called save right now. If we just edit this, open with, you know what, I'm just going to open with Notepad for now. And we can see this is a nasty big bunch of JSON. However, what happens is with the player is that we do the same thing. In there, there is a basically a game info object for the player. Now, when we were doing this before, I had an issue with the save. We got the save working. The objects went to the right spot, but the player did not. In addition, when we started the game, there was an error with how it was being handled, and it actually reset the levels. The save wasn't working properly. And so what happened was how our player was actually being used. The old player, we would take this object here, player, and we would save the position and the rotation from here. So I did the same thing for this player. We've got our Hexa 4 rig backpack. If we look down here, this is where it is started now. Here's our VR player. And we were taking the position and the rotation and storing that into the save file. Now, watch what happens when we actually play this. So, I'm highlighting the new player. Watch what happens when I move. You will notice that those numbers are not moving, are they? Now I'm going to double check. No, they are staying the same. And so that was what the issue was. Our player kept starting at the beginning, and that's because that position never changes. And what's interesting, even more so, is if we go down in the tree under hexabody, it's these items here: the head, the pelvis, the knee, and the loco ball. Like even if we go to hexabody, it's not moving at either. It's if we go to head, this one's moving. You can see the items changing. And so how do we do that? Because, you know, my first attempt was to save the 4 items, and we can see this here. So yeah, I'm passing these objects in here now, and even more than that, I've got a wrapper object to store all of that. If we look at our VR player object here, it just has those 4 objects, and then using our sub what do you call it, subset object to store the data. So my first attempt was to use those 4 objects and then set the 4 items here. It was not a success though. It was close, but it was not a success. So yeah, what I ended up doing then was actually using the local ball position. So as I said, when the player in the VR moves and rolls, it's these 4 items here that move. And so I actually end up using the position of this local ball. And when we load the game from a save file, I set the position of this object to where the local ball was. And that actually has been much more successful. So again, it's just something to be aware of, and we can, I'll show, you know, I'll load up a level here. In fact, we'll go back to level 2 so I can also talk about the pointer stuff that I was doing. But if you're ever using the hexabody package from the asset store, it is worth knowing that these top 2 items actually don't move with the player. All right, so when we open the chapter 2 here, we'll see, like I was talking about, how we've got our attempt at the pointer.
Well, I guess I'm kind of stuck. Where are you, Joran?
And so you can see this was an attempt. You can see it's going right through my finger there if my finger is bent. But this also kind of really points out the issue with the controllers, because the controllers are such that we're holding it like this. My hands should be like as if it was that. And so if I'm pointing the controller like this, the pointer should be pointed out like that. So I do have to fix that. It's my son thinks it's because this package was made on the Valve Index. But yeah, lots of little things to do. In the PC version, the sword was hung on the wall, but it really wasn't hung on the wall. It was just is kinematic equals to false, but it's now leaning up there. This is an example too of, you know, like, this is pretty large. You know what, the sword's probably fine. I can fit it in the backpack though. There we go. Grab the other one, put it in there too. Alright, let's just go open the door and we'll be able to see the save work. So I do have an issue with this as well, but I'm not going to kind of point that one out yet. We'll just kind of do this. Oh, no, don't drop it. There we go. Well, I can show it here now. If I hold on to this while I touch the sword onto the shield, it'll grab me and pull me into the wall. And then sometimes the swords actually go into the wall. It also says I can pick it up, but I can't. So just little things like that. That's the polish that's still there that needs to be done. If I come into here,
Hello?
we get our voice line, we get the new music, and a save file happened. So let's just stop the game, reload it, just to show that the save is actually working. And there we go. So we're in the right spot. Music is right. When we start it, we of course get the prologue, Draven's Home, and we get the the black background that fades out. Fades in, fades out to transparent. And the way I did it in the PC version is that that's a black image on the canvas that eventually over time becomes transparent and then is inactive. If we look at our canvas, there is an item here called fade image that is now, you can see, inactive. And so if we had this highlighted as we loaded, we would see this color, the transparency value of this color change over time. But that again doesn't work in the VR version. And so instead I have created if we look under our hexabody player, under the hexabody, under pelvis, here's our camera rig, offset and scaler. This is actually our camera, and underneath that we've got this screen fade quad. So in the VR, what I've done is created a quad object I should say, that is constantly just in front of the camera, and right now it's deactivated if we click on it. And it's got a fade material that is black as well, and it's the same sort of concept, but when we hit the end of the game or end of the level, it pops in. So let's just quickly go through the prologue here and we can see that in action. Also get a little bit of a peek at some of the interactions here. I am sitting in the chair, so I feel pretty short. Usually, well, let's stand up quick, you can see, and I'm on my cord. Just a sec. You can see I feel pretty tall when we stand up. I don't know if that actually comes through on the stream, but like I'm looking down at this torch instead of, being able to reach up and get it. We're almost able to reach the. My hands caught on there. Almost able to reach up and grab the roof there. So there is a bit of a scaling issue that we've got to deal with. Because as people, that's what people are expect. If you sit down or you squat in VR, you need to be able to accommodate that. So but all these things we're gonna look at. All right, we of course did this level numerous times on stream with the PC version, but one of the things that still has to be addressed is the reading of letters. We'd already talked about that earlier. And for example here,
I guess I had better hurry. I am going to need to collect my things. I should start with some food, maybe some bread and cheese.
So I'm triggering the voice line after the letter. Like, that's not reading the letter, right? We need to hear from Joran and the whole reason for the game and the story. So I've left that. I'm going to leave it to the end. As I said, my son's working on a book animation, and once that's taken care of, we can kind of put some of that back in. When we're standing, it's a little easier to get some of these things in just hitting my desk there with the controller. This is also an issue. If you put the cheese in, you can watch how large it gets and hangs out of my backpack.
Now I need my notebook. It's in the office upstairs.
And I think it's because, like, if we put this on the table here, and we point to it, you can see where the grab point is on that. It's right on the corner. And most of the things here, again, if we put the bread, it's the same thing. Like, the grab point is on the bottom instead of the middle. And so I think partly to do with that, and it's the same with the book here, it's not in the middle. So we'll just have to address some of that as well. With the keypads, there was an interesting bug that, you know, because the way this works is it's looking for, that's kind of part of what happens. Did I just turn the microphone off? No. So I do have to kind of do this, but I'm just going to move back a bit. So the issue was, so I'm even getting it here now. It should only click once, right? So if I'm pointing now, it's better. So this. So clearly there needs to be a polishing there, and I got to think about how better to do that. Probably just a delay in how often it can get clicked. And we talked about two earlier, but if you weren't here, already now I'm just like in the PC game. I use a click to light this. I'm now, you know, actually just touching it and it clicks. My son and I have talked about it would be cool if we could have like some sort of flame in our hand that we're throwing at it, since this is sort of a magical world. Right, let me just take a look at chats and see. Okay, we're good.
It sounded like it came from the basement. I better go check. Who is it? Is anybody there?
So same thing here. It'd be nice if you just had like some sort of fire that you threw. That'd be kind of fun in order to light these. Or even if you had the fire that touches it. I don't know. We'll have to play around with that. So this door sometimes doesn't close when we go in. I believe it's if I hit the...
What the... Wait! No!
If I hit this invisible part here where it played that voice line before the open animation is done,
This wasn't a mess yesterday.
then it doesn't close. And of course we didn't run into that on the PC version because when we go in after opening, there's a camera transition that pans over the whole room, which we've taken out on the VR version. So here's an example of, like, this is just too big, right? I mean, it makes sense. The stool is that big, but especially when you do the grab, you know, and there's some other things, like we've got this crate here that I can't pick up in this level, but in other levels I can, and that like is going to take up my entire vision. So we do have to figure out something with that. Let's just put this here for now. We need the wine bottle. Oops. And then the cup. We must have knocked that over with the bag. And we've got the basket. Oops. Now, one thing I do like about this version, I don't need an inventory viewer when you can just rotate the object in your hand, so that's kind of handy. Handy. So you can see, like, all of these levels are such that, so this light should be off. There's a bug.
I had better get going. Jorn will be waiting.
They're all in a state like this where we can get through them. I've spent a bit more time on the prologue here, just fixing some of the bugs that were found, so it is a little more polished than some of the others perhaps, but So here's the
Shouldn't there be more noise
fade out
outside?
that we were talking about. Hopefully it works.
Where did everybody go?
It was a flash for me, but there you can start seeing it fading away. And does it go? Yeah, it does it there too. So,
Where is everybody?
what's interesting is, again, the fade into that chapter was not in the headset, so we're gonna have to address that as well. All right, so we get our letter, and you know, you can go pick up the letter if I can reach the floor. So this is another thing. Right now, in this way, I can't reach the floor, so I gotta just adjust the player so that if I'm standing and I reach down the floor, that it's actually going to hit the floor. But as we've been seeing, we can also use this force grab, which is you can see there's a little dot on the letter, and I click my item now, or my button.
I guess I had better hurry. I am going to need to collect my things. I should start with some food, maybe some bread and cheese.
Okay, and so this I had a problem with, that if I used the force grab, it wouldn't play that voice line unless I switched hands, or I put it in the backpack and then took it out. And so the reason for that, again, it's an interesting reason, is that the way I was doing it, I was again using that collision, testing to see if the letter hit one of my hands. The interesting part is that with the force grab, the collision between the object, no matter what object you're force grabbing, and the hand doesn't happen. When you switch hands, collision happens, and that's actually expected behavior from the hexabody player and the force grab. I think the force grab is part of the HVR, the Hurricane VR package. Don't quote me on that though. Anyways, that is actually expected behavior. Well, it's what happens. Is it expected? I can't say. So how did I fix that? In the PC version, I had whether the mouse clicked on the letter was, you know, the signal to trigger stuff. And so in this case, it was whether or not the letter hit one of the hands. I had my new function, right? The Hexa VR has a built-in function that you're able to detect what's actually in your hands. And so all I have to do is change it to that function, and now we get it regardless of which hand I use for the force grab. So again, just something to think about. And you know, you're using some of these packages, it's good to take a step back and say what's built in, because that's probably the better way to use it, as opposed to some of the ways like I did. I was trying to detect collision with the hands instead of actually using the built-in functions.